what does that really tell me? And I think that's really kind of the critical part, and it matters to all things that you put in the DNS. DNSSEC is going to tell me that I got exactly what was in the zone file, right? But what that means is not part of the system. That has to be something which comes external to the system. IP addresses are no different than anything else that I might put in the DNS and sign with DNSSEC. So it's an integrity mechanism, it's an authentication mechanism. I know that I got what I was supposed to get. I just don't know what that means. And I think IP addresses have that same question. So we've only solved part of the problem. The other half of the problem is the registration part. What is it that validated what was put in there, and why should I believe that, and how do I know what that process was that got it there? And I think that's an important question, and that's sort of the research work. You're asking for things for GCSEC to do. I'll jump a little bit on that topic. I think that's an interesting area for exploration as we begin to put this enabling technology out there. Now comes the issue of what it means to put stuff in there and the process by which it got there, and how do I get to evaluate that once I've validated the information?
Yeah. So that's a segue in the first question, actually. Yeah. Just to come back to my introductory presentation, I showed the transparent envelope with a seal on the envelope. This is exactly the difference between having a piece of paper in a sealed transparent envelope and having a piece of paper with a seal that is put there by the person who sort of read it and said seal of approval. Yeah, so it's a seal of integrity versus a seal of approval. There comes in the policies. My belief is that trust cannot be enforced. Trust can only be deserved. Trust is a fairly human thing. It can only be deserved. You cannot say, you have to trust me. Trust comes from behavior. Trust comes from demonstrating a pattern. At least that's my sort of impression. And so if you establish a pattern of policies that force you to do the right thing, in the end people will start to trust you. Now I have to say that if you look at the DNS today, or at the internet at large, people actually trust the internet. Yesterday there was a number called 39% of the people said, I actually don't really trust the internet. My follow-up question, was your presentation, I believe, the 39%, is that correct?
No, it was mine.
It was yours?
Yes.
Okay.
The declaration of the EU Vice President.
Yeah, exactly. 39% doesn't really trust the internet when they do. For secure transactions.
That's it.
So how many people, how does that compare to meat space? If I go to a car salesman and I buy a car, do I really trust him? How many people do trust their car salesman, their second-hand car salesman, if they buy a car that they buy good property? I mean, that's the 39% doesn't say much if you don't compare it to what the real level of trust is in general transactions throughout society. So that number, doesn't say much. And that comes back to that level of trust. If you establish, people currently trust the internet for their businesses at a certain level, which I believe is more or less comparable to trust in ordinary societal transaction. I believe that might decrease if we collectively don't do the right thing. And it could be that because of consistent behavior in certain pockets, operational pockets of the internet, those pockets become more trusted over time. So taking that to the .post example, suppose that you can generate a bunch of policies and stick to them that give people a sort of higher trust level than, say, another top-level domain, then the .post might actually help people, customers, to identify something as a trusted service. I don't think that having .post and posting the policies will actually enforce that trust, but it might grow over time. This is something that has to grow, and it might work or not. Go ahead, because I'm capturing the mic here, and I shouldn't.
Yeah, Russ Mundy, and I'd like to speak to the first two, because I believe they're very closely related and extend what Jim was talking about earlier. And that is both the policies, and you were asking specifically about IP, but I want to extend that to all content in DNS. And one of the things that I think it's very easy to lose sight of, as those of us that have worked on DNSSEC very hard for very many years, DNSSEC itself, per se, is not a fundamental function of DNS, all right? The fundamental function of DNS is the content of each zone. And the content of each zone, when a zone is signed, includes DNSSEC related information. So it falls right within that spectrum, if you will. It includes in A records, IP information. So the content is what people need to keep in the forefront as the most important thing about the DNS itself. And so without DNSSEC, there is no mechanism, though, for users of DNS, which is anybody that uses the internet, to know that they have received the proper content from the answer that they sent out into the wild and woolly DNS internet world.
Just to continue on the first question, if I understood it right, I'm not a very PKI-friendly person. I've been around for too long to be that anymore. Because I think that the third party in the islands of the X509 PKI systems that we see by the pre-installed certificate, the root certificates, they have played out its role. If you look into your browser today, there is hundreds and hundreds of root certificates, and you have no clue for most of them where they're from. So the levels of assurance that offers, it differs widely between the different, and the validation of the subject itself is based, in most cases, on a single email address. So you...
Based on the DNS.
Based on the DNS, yeah, which is insecure, in a way, until it's signed. So that means that the trust in practice, it stems from the domain name system, as you say. And by using DNSSEC, we can strengthen this chain and eliminate the step with the certificate authority, which is a problem in itself. I've been struggling with some of them, so I know. By publishing what you could, like as a SSL policy in DNS, you can put your policy in DNS to show, which could force SSL for some given service, and that's your choice. As well as DKIM, you can actually filter. In the future, you can filter all those signatures that you don't like and you don't approve them. So I think DNSSEC, in my opinion, is a fantastic enabler if it's used right and if you understand the context wherein it is really usable. So you shouldn't trust DNSSEC to solve the word starvation problem, but it can do a lot.
Looking at the clock, it's 10:45. We have 15 minutes to go. I want to skip the, not skip the skeptic part. Who is actually still very skeptic about all this? Wahid? Anybody else? Be fair and honest. I mean, we are preaching for our own church here. Being in Rome, that's probably appropriate today. But there are a lot of people who've been working with DNSSEC in this room that I would almost say have attached their careers to them. So we're all pretty much biased all here, and it's probably informative if you are still a skeptic and inject that to your colleagues, because that's something they take home. And it's also good for us to do the reality check. So, Wahid, You're the only one who raised your hands, and I actually don't believe that. Go ahead.
Thank you again. I'm sorry, I'm the only skeptic, so do I have a chance to come back to the hotel today or something? I don't know. Okay. Somebody says devil's advocate. I'm just a pupil for you guys. I'm learning here, so this is the truth. I'm a technical guy. I believe in whatever is said and done, and I know that we need it definitely. But again, as what Olaf said, is that I'm just throwing the ideas so that I'm feeling that there's something that we need to do. Okay, so 1 billion internet users. So we're doing fine, right? Why do we need DNSSEC, right? How do you make people believe that they need DNSSEC? I think this is what needs to be done now. I guess we're going to marketing JCSEC needs to work on, I guess, so that they know that there is something better that they have to do. But I'm doing fine, right?
Wahid, do we need to target the 1 billion internet users, or do we need to target the people who are responsible for delivering the service to the 1 billion internet users?
Carrot and stick. Okay, carrot is the users, because at the end this is what Douglas said and some others said. Because I need to believe that DNS is serving me. That's why I'm going to select a website that is supporting, or a service provider that is supporting DNSSEC. So you got me. eBay.com supports DNSSEC, so I'm going to deal with these guys. eBay.it are not, so I'm not going to use these guys or use service. So if I have the decision to support DNSSEC as a regular user, it means that I will give a good force for it, good force for applying this good technology and good service. So people need to know about it, carrot, and they need to know how good is it. Now the stick is that, from my side of things, is that the policy. Mean the Homeland Security and governments at least are forcing registrars and ISPs to use it, so that because people want it. So I'm just giving solutions on a problem. But coming back to this, to the question is that I'm just a regular user here, and I don't know what to do with it. So I think more marketing is needed. That's all. Thank you.
Wahid, yesterday I recall you had a question about costs. Can you repeat that question?
Again, for postal operator, Saudi Post or Poste Italiane, and the question was given by Giovanni just now. Again, is that for me, what do I need to invest, or what I need to do so that I can support the DNSSEC? Just as I said, as a user at the end of this service, or providing .post solution in the future. But really, there is no cost from my side. But what I'm going to do is going to breach for the ISP that I'm using, breach for the internet service unit in the country I am in, and so that they can use it. But really, they are the ones who are putting the effort and the cost. So would I want to share that with them so that I'm just a user then?
I believe there is an underlying point that you're making that maybe might not be obvious, but
Mm-hmm.
The underlying point being, in order for this to be successful, there are many parties that need to bear part of these costs. Is there anybody who wants to speak to that? Oh, see, Matt is semi-volunteering.
I think it's important to discuss the costs of DNSSEC, and there are two sides of DNSSEC, as I've tried to emphasize yesterday. One is the signing and one is the resolving or validation. And the biggest cost is definitely on the signing side. And the only possible way is to follow the hosting of the zone. I mean, the TLD has to take the cost of signing the TLD zone. And who should pay that? Well, the holders of domain names, they pay a fee to have a domain name, and the TLD must take the cost out of that. And if you have a domain name and you want to sign it, you have to ask the question, the cost of doing this, is it worth it? If it's not, then you probably should not sign the zone. If you don't think it's worth, I mean, if you don't think that the content that you have is important enough to have it signed. On the ISP side, which I represent here on this workshop, we have to ask the cost of doing validation. Is it worth it? And my company has answered yes, it's worth the cost, because we see it as an insurance. We see the risk of providing fake data for our customers, and the cost that comes with that is lowered by DNSSEC. But the costs that we see today, I think, are much higher than the cost that we will see in the future. Why so? Well, today we are the pioneers. We have to invent everything. We have to invent routines. We have to invent the processes. We have to invent the tools. But tomorrow, there will be tools, there will be processes, routines, and you can copy those. So I don't think that the cost in the future will be so high as it might look today. But I think it's important. You have to ask this insurance. I think it's, I want to look at DNSSEC as an insurance. This insurance, are we prepared to pay that?
Look,
I wanted to make the point that I think Olof made on the first day. I mean, I think this whole fixation on wanting users to want DNSSEC is just completely misguided. Users don't want DNSSEC. You made the point that has been made for years. Users don't want IPv6. They want the internet to work, and they want to trust it. And it's got to be the service providers and the platform vendors who understand that without such an infrastructural technology, the cost and complexity to you to keep delivering a trusted platform gets to be too high. Right? Users will never want it. Actually, usability studies of security mechanisms indicate that they are horrifically ineffective to present to the end user. In our space in the government, we don't expect, if we get to the point of it, even in a restricted .gov domain, community of interest, we don't expect to present to the user the choice whether or not you connect to a site that doesn't validate. That will be a policy driven out of our CIO shop, right? It'll be somebody whose task is to ensure the trustworthiness of our computing platform will make that decision. I don't think any of this is something that you market to the end users. It's those people responsible for delivering trusted platforms and trusted services who have to understand the cost and complexity of trying to do that without securing the naming infrastructure.
so I got 3 more people in the mic line. After that, I'm going to skip the question on what you're going to report back, but I'm happy you all thought about that for a moment. We can take that to the coffee break. And after the 3 questions, I want to give the microphone to Jim to give a sort of summary of what we discussed. So please go ahead.
I have a security background, so I'm used to see at the question from the risk point of view. In this perspective, going to DNSSEC is not a matter of choice. It's a matter of maintaining the actual level of trust in internet. So I try to change the question in not if we have to go, but when. When it's a matter of competitive advantage. So customers are media to go to address the answer when I choose to go to the DNSSEC. If I have a competitive advantage against the other companies or
I'm going to ask you a reverse question, because you used the word competitive advantage, which is which means that the deployment would be very market driven. Is there also an aspect of public responsibility?
From the infrastructure point of view, it's not a market. It's a duty. But from the who get on the bus, this choice is a competitive advantage. So if eBay.com or .gov domain or something else
So that means if somebody in the market creates a successful marketing campaign based on the availability of DNSSEC and would draw, say, 1% customers more, just because they say we've got DNSSEC, like Lucas, they draw 1% more customers because of that. That might be move things forward, you think?
Yeah.
Well, how do you force that? How can you sort of force that sort of thing happens? Or enable it? Not force is maybe the wrong word.
But carrot and stick, no? Stick are surviving. The actual level of transaction of trust on the internet is need to have this piece of evolving matter. The market knows the answer to the question when I have to get on the bus.
I only just add, another question is only a comment that comes from Post Italiana. That is probably one of the main actors who want to run services within the internet community and within the internet infrastructure. So I only want just make an example. If you want to steal a car and you have in front of you 5 different cars, but only one has not a security system. So how do you think that I can direct my attention to the 4 that are strongly protected to the ones that are not protected? So I think that it's important for all the partners, technical partners. This is like, let me say, a suggestion or something like that. I would like to be sure that all the technical partners that are inside these rooms understand well that every single individual who wants to run business, secure business, wants to have as much security as possible. So please speed up as much as possible the implementation of the DNSSEC, because this is one that people like us need to run a secure services within the internet. That's the point for our point of view.
Yes, it's okay, thank you. I have 2 little things. First of all, concerning the report, what I really appreciated in this DNSSEC, at the beginning I was very pessimistic, and